Welcome to the Female Solo Travel Masterclass. I wanted to kickstart the year by empowering you to solo travel. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. So if you're unsure if you can actually travel solo, I'm here to show you that you can. And I'm going to be taking you through every stage of the solo travel journey to help you feel more equipped and more empowered to do it. It's going to take an hour, more or less, and we'll be covering mindset, inspiration, exactly how to travel alone. So, whatever stage of your solo journey that you're at, hopefully, I'm going to have you covered in this masterclass. So, how it's going to work is that we're going to be walking through 6 stages of the solo journey. And you don't need to take notes because I'll actually be sending out a link of all the slides. And then all you need to do is click through the link for every single section, and it will take you to the relevant article, which will give you in-depth advice on what we touch about in the masterclass. So first of all, why have I called this a masterclass? I've called it a masterclass because it covers every stage of your solo journey. And if you're wondering who is this blonde woman, who am I to teach it? I'm Lisa, and I run the award-winning solo female travel blog called Girl About the Globe. I started it back in 2012, which is what, 13 years ago now. It's crazy. And I started it because I wanted to document if there was life after divorce, and there is. So, Girl About the Globe actually stands for Conscious Travellers. What that basically means is that we care about the world and we want to give back when we travel. I initially started my blog by just storytelling about all my adventures from Africa onwards. And then since then, it's grown into products. So I've now got the Solo Travel Starter Bundle, a book called A Female Guide to Solo Travel, a Girl About the Globe podcast, which was the #1 solo female travel podcast. It's #2 at the moment because I haven't done it for a few months, and a discount app, which I've partnered with more than 40 brands to bring discounts to solo female travelers. I'm also one of those really annoying country counters. I know some people don't like people who count countries, but it's my goal in this lifetime to visit every single country. And if I can do that at the age of 50, I'm going to feel so accomplished. And obviously, the more countries I go to, the more I can write about them as well. I've navigated a lot of the world solo, and I also want to help other people travel to them solo, especially emerging destinations that actually want tourism. So far, I've been to 152 countries and 119 of these alone. On this masterclass, we're going to go through a solo travel journey. I've created 6 steps of solo travel to help reduce the overwhelm of solo traveling. So it's going from the stage of thinking about it, being on the fence, not too sure if you can actually do it, to being on the road and making an impact. I'm going to share my slides. The solo travel journey, the first part is solo empowerment. So it's actually gaining the mindset to be able to do it. Um, this is where you want to travel solo, but you kind of need some extra encouragement to be able to do it. The second part is then the solo inspiration, which is where to actually go. This is when you've made the decision to do it, but you don't really know where to go or where to start. So this is all with ideas on how to do it. And maybe you want to read stories from other women who have traveled there solo to get some inspiration. Then it's how to travel solo, which is how to actually do it. This is dealing with culture shock, travel fatigued, dining alone, staying safe, which is a massive fear of a lot of women who travel solo. Then, when you're feeling confident enough, you're ready, yep, you've got the confidence, you want to do it, then it's all about planning it. So it's what you're going to do when you get there, where you're actually going, the best booking sites to book it through, and how to actually plan it, which can be very overwhelming. Next one is make an impact, which is how to give back. You can actually make an impact just by booking through the site, to be honest. I don't know if you know, but Girl About the Globe is a social impact blog, which means that every single time you book through a link which is affiliated, then I actually donate money to the Girl About the Globe Foundation, which helps vulnerable girls living in conflict zones. So you're making an impact just by looking at the blog. But if you do also want to make an impact, I show you how to be, yeah, a socially conscious traveler or just a conscious traveler, and also how you can travel better. So you can make a difference to the local community on your trip, and you also get a better experience of your trip because you can immerse in destinations more when you solo. Then it's the final stage, which is returning back home, how to adapt when you get back. Don't think people should underestimate this part of the journey. I do think it's a very important stage, and I'll be covering that as well. So, first thing is first, why should you even travel solo? If you haven't traveled solo before and you're asking yourself, can I really travel solo? Yes, everyone can travel solo. Do you need to be the most confident person in the world? No, you don't. When I actually first started traveling in my 20s, I was so shy, I would not speak to anybody unless they spoke to me first. Traveling alone really got me out of my shell, and I had to speak to people. If I wanted to make friends, if I wanted to meet other people, if I needed to barter for things, if I needed to navigate my way around logistically, I had to put myself out there. So it's really good if you do actually want to gain confidence. And there's this quote that I've included on the slides, which is solo travel isn't about being alone, it's about being free to be yourself. This was an anonymous quote that I found, and I absolutely love it because I don't think solo travel is just about going on holiday alone. It's not just about navigating your way around the world if you're choosing to travel longer term as well. It's about empowering yourself when you actually get there. It's about navigating challenges. It's self-reflection on those long journeys that you might have on a bus or a train or a plane. It's all about building self-worth, which then, when you return, that ripples into every single area of your life when you get back. But once you realize you can travel alone, it makes you realize, well, what else can I do? It really builds a confidence in your self-worth. I just think it's amazing for personal development, really. And it's all about freedom, confidence, taking some time away from people pleasing, especially if you're the kind of person who doesn't have a lot of time to yourself and you can't say no to people. Solo travel gives you that permission to do what you want to do when you want to do it without answering to anyone else. You can be offline. You don't have to be answering messages and being available for other people. It's all about you. So it's kind of about self-love as well. And in my experience, solo travel is full of serendipities. So it's meeting the right people, getting lost and finding a hidden gem somewhere that you might not have come across if you hadn't have taken the wrong path or something. And it's all about connecting with people on a deeper level, especially because body language is universal in the world. Smiling at a stranger and them smiling back. There is no better feeling when you're solo traveling. Even if you don't speak to someone for the whole day, just that smile will make your day. It can also restore your faith in humanity. You realize how many good-hearted people are out there. You get to set boundaries if you're not very good at setting boundaries, and you get out of your comfort zone, which is a really good way for you to evolve and grow. So I do see solo travel as kind of a spiritual experience. It's a way of me evolving. I always come back from a solo trip a different version of myself. That may sound a little bit woo-woo, but even if it's just a slight shift, even if I just feel more empowered, then it doesn't have to be life-changing. It doesn't have to be a year away and it's life-changing. Solo travel for me always gives me what I need, and hopefully it will always give you what you need as well. But first, before you do it, you obviously need the confidence to kickstart yourself and be able to do it. So one of the biggest things that stops people traveling is judgment of other people, especially if you've never traveled alone before. This is where the myths about traveling abroad comes in. It's myths from other people, myths that you might have read on the media and the news. A lot of people, in my experience, who say you shouldn't go there, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, they haven't done it themselves, and they are just projecting fear onto you, onto the person who actually wants to go and travel or move abroad or become nomadic and sell everything. They are more worried about you than because they wouldn't do it. So they don't understand why someone would generally want to do that. They would have a very different perspective of the world as well and see things through a different lens. Everyone sees things through their own lens. And if we're passionate about traveling and someone else isn't, they're just not going to understand you. So don't allow their fears to become yours. Some of the myths that you may even have yourself as a self-limiting belief, it doesn't necessarily have to come from an external source, such as parents, even a husband. or a wife or friends, you may think that you're too old to travel. I'm going to be 50 this year in December, and I've been traveling since my early 20s, and my solo travel has definitely evolved over each single decade. And you're never too old to travel. Solo travel over 50 is booming. It's absolutely booming. When I first started my blog in 2012, there weren't that many resources for women traveling alone. Now the travel industry is catering for women traveling alone. There are so many blogs out there. That's why it can be quite overwhelming to know which resources to read. But it's great because it's showing us that so many women are actually traveling, and they're traveling alone to places that they may not have even considered traveling alone to a few years ago. So it's booming. You are never too old. I recently went on a trip and I met a woman who's in her 70s. I just believe travel is ageless, and it's all about your mindset, and it's all about how you feel. And travel brings perspective back to you, and it slows time down because you're living for that day. You're having plans in that day. I recently came back from a month and a half trip, and I've now been back nearly a month. And this month has gone so fast because I don't feel like I've really accomplished anything. When I was traveling, I was seeing different things. I was seeing new countries. It really slows down time. Obviously, traveling in your 20s may have a different perspective to you traveling in your later years, but there is something out there for everybody. It doesn't necessarily have to all be about backpacker travel or party travel. You can now travel for culture, you can travel for cuisine and food tours, and there are so many more tours and interests in different countries that you can travel for. And when you're traveling, you find that you'd connect to people of all different ages because you've got a different mindset. You've got a growth mindset. A lot of people in your hometown might have a fixed mindset, which means that they don't want to grow or they don't want to experience things outside of their comfort zone. That's something you have in common with people when you're traveling. So it really doesn't matter what age you are. If another myth is travel is too expensive, I agree. Flights are now more expensive than they used to be pre-COVID times. But it's still doable, especially if you're flexible with your dates and you can plan ahead for a few months. You can find a cheaper or the cheapest time to be able to fly. If you're going to be staying in five-star hotels and eating out every single night, then yes, it will be expensive. But there are ways that you can do it on a budget, or you can actually go to budget countries, which is why I've managed to see so many countries so far. I've done all the budget countries. In your home country, if you go out every weekend or you have to get food every week, sometimes it's the same price if you're somewhere in a different country. So it's not really going to cost you that much more apart from your accommodation and your flights. And you can work or you can volunteer as well when you're away. So it depends what you want to do, but travel doesn't have to be that expensive. If you're thinking, yeah, it sounds great, but it's not really the right time, there never is a right time. And I'm not just talking about solo travel. There never is a right time to do anything. And I don't know about you, but I feel like time is actually flying past and it's getting quicker the older that I'm getting. So jump on that opportunity. There will never be a right time. There will always be something to stop you if you let it. So many people say that they want to do something, and yet years pass and they haven't done it. Don't let that be you. If you're worried that you don't have enough money, this is obviously another concern. Apart from safety, money is the second biggest concern for solo travel, according to the survey from our community. That's why I say consider countries that are cheaper. You can always look at flying into one destination, which is what I do, and then travel out of another destination. So you can just travel overland, which is also more sustainable as well. Or have a look at trying to get a second job and actually earn some extra income coming in. Maybe you can rent out your apartment to an Airbnb. You can get money back for your accommodation when you're actually traveling. Because that's also a big commitment as well as your apartment. But if you can rent it out, if you're not sure about your job, even if you just go away for a week or a fortnight, it is going to re-energize you. I went away and I hadn't been away for nearly a year and I was burnt out. I was very stressed. And this trip was just what I needed. I was offline for a few weeks and, just tapping in and out of social media as and when I wanted to, not as and when I felt I should. And it did me the world of good. And I got my creativity back again, and I feel more aligned. I've got more clarity. Sometimes you just need a break. You really do need a break. So if you're worried about your job, maybe you can ask if they will keep your job open, if you can take a sabbatical, if you're thinking about going away for longer than your holiday allows. Maybe you actually want to change jobs and you can see if there are some remote jobs out there. But don't let that stop you either. Another myth about traveling abroad is should you really be traveling abroad if you're going through a hard time? Yes. I've traveled abroad when I've been grieving. I've traveled abroad when I was nearly bankrupt. I traveled abroad when I was going through, obviously, my divorce, when I was getting over a long distance breakup. It does you the world of good. There is something about sitting on a plane, bus, or train and traveling for hours at a time, traveling miles and miles. It feels like you're shedding old layers of you and you're leaving the old version of you behind. I honestly don't think anything beats solo travel. Yes, you may have slightly more challenges if you are traveling alone when you are going through a hard time, but you're not going to be having challenges if you're at home and you're going through a hard time anyway. I'd rather be doing that when I'm next to a gorgeous beach or a volcano or something rather than sat in my own apartment. There is no set path for anyone in society anymore. There used to be, but now people are not having kids. I don't have children. People are moving abroad at all different ages of their lives. People are giving up their career and starting their own business. Just because it's not the norm in your family or in your friend circle does not mean that it's not right for you. So if you are thinking about doing something, I'm giving you permission to go and do it and just take that risk because I always wonder, what if? Like, what if I didn't do this? And my motto in life is no regrets. I think that's the only way you can live your life because nobody knows what's around the corner. So another myth that also goes into having anxiety when you travel is the world too scary? Or you think the world is too scary, other people think the world is too scary, and it can be, of course, there are places that you shouldn't go to in certain countries, but then there are places that you probably shouldn't go to in your home country. Like London isn't the safest city in the world anymore. So as long as you've got your wits about you, you're streetwise, and you practice some safety techniques and tips, the world isn't that scary. Crime can happen anywhere. So admittedly, some countries are not as safe as others. But if you listen to the locals and you avoid the places they advise you not to go, travel's no more scary than sometimes your own capital city. And if you don't know if you can do it alone, you can. But one way you can actually do it is just by test driving your solo trip. So you could go away by yourself for a weekend first, or even just one evening. And it could be something as simple as just a camping trip, or book yourself into a hostel or hotel in your hometown or the nearest city to you. And just to get that confidence up. Or if the thought of traveling solo really is too much, then maybe you might want to consider a group tour for all or part of your trip. Or you can just start with day trips to nearby destinations, practice solo activities in everyday life, take yourself out for dinner and just see how you feel being out for dinner. Join a walking tour in your country or even a meetup group. Traveling alone with anxiety, yes, it does cause anxiety. And whenever I go away on a solo trip, I always get anxiety before I go, weeks before I go. It never goes away. And I travel to a lot of places alone. So it's so natural and it can be a weird mix of excitement and nerves at the same time. But it's your survival brain trying to keep you safe. Your mind does not like you going out your comfort zone, so it will do everything it can to keep you in your comfort zone. So that's why it can create some anxiety and some panic around solo traveling. And the important thing to remember is that you are not alone. Travel anxiety is more common than you may think. Don't let it put you off having the most amazing experience. If you break down every single element of the journey, it helps you feel more in control. Then there's culture shock and homesickness. So sometimes when we are thrust into surroundings which are unfamiliar to us, The shock can be a little bit too much. I've actually experienced culture shock in Spain, and I'm from England, so I wasn't prepared to be culture shocked in Spain. But you can get it anywhere because the culture is very different. But as I say, first of all, just to build your confidence for traveling alone, look at going on day trips, look at seeing what you can do in your local town, or just take a weekend away somewhere completely new just to build up your confidence. Solo travel inspiration. There are so many places out there. I mean, the UN has 193 recognized countries, but there are so many more in the world. So how do you choose where to go? As a first-time solo, you might want to consider going somewhere where you feel more comfortable. So you might want to consider going somewhere that speaks the same language as you, that has travel infrastructure, that's really safe. So, for example, places that I recommend for first-time solos, if you are a first-time solo, is Australia, New Zealand, Thailand as well, Canada, Southeast Asia, Bali. You may also want to consider Japan, but it's difficult to get by with the language, so you do need Google Translate. That could also be a very good country to consider for first-time solo. If spending a week lounging on a beach isn't really your thing, you could center your holiday around your hobby. So you could decide to visit a famous city to admire the landmarks, or if you love history, you could go and visit ruins in Greece. I love Greece. I love island hopping in Greece. Go in somewhere that you feel really excited about and that has the activities to suit your personality will actually make sure that you have a better solo trip. You do not need to challenge yourself first time and go somewhere where you can't speak the language, where you don't know logistically how to get around, and which doesn't really have activities that you're passionate about. Set yourself up for success and go somewhere that you really want to go to before. If you've actually been solo traveling before and you're kind of more of a seasoned solo, you might want to consider places that are a little bit more rustic, such as Albania, Bolivia, Colombia, Georgia, Mexico, Jordan, Tunisia. I mean, the world is your oyster, literally. And if you're a cultural girl about the globe, then you could always consider Bhutan, Easter Island, which is amazing. You can only reach there from Chile, I believe. Faroe Islands, Ireland, Malaysia, or you can go to Moldova or Slovakia if you're interested in folklore, traditions. If you love tribes, you could go to Ethiopia, Kazakhstan, Papua New Guinea, where I've just come back from, Vanuatu, learn more about the Red Indians in the USA. Maybe you love dancing and you want to go and learn the samba or the tango or go to Cuba and do some Cuban salsa or even Spain. You can go to Spain. You can also go to Turkey, do some Turkish dancing. Puerto Rico is great if you love dancing. A lot of famous singers came from Puerto Rico. Or maybe you love diving. So many places you can go diving. Got the Great Barrier Reef, you've got the Caribbean, Koh Tao in Thailand, Mauritius, the Maldives, Palau in Oceania, which I just came back from as well. Then there's history. You may want to go and visit more about the old Silk Road in Iran or Uzbekistan, for example. Got ancient civilizations in Greece and Egypt and China. Or maybe you love wildlife and you just want to go and see the gorillas and go trekking with the gorillas in Uganda, Rwanda, or DRC. I do recommend Uganda. Maybe you want to see the tigers in India. There's just so many places you want to go. Or for trip ideas, what you could do is consider going to a festival or a sports event and then doing solo travel off the back of that. So you could go to a Formula One event, say, for example, in Bahrain or Singapore, and then spend a few days after that in that city. You might also get to meet people who are also going there for the same event that you're going to. You could travel to emerging destinations if you want to try somewhere a little bit different, such as Uzbekistan, Oman, Ethiopia, Qatar, Bhutan. Or maybe you want to see all the seven wonders of the world. Maybe you just want to cruise through the Caribbean and have more of a relaxing break and let the cruise ship logistically take you to the islands as a good way of meeting other people. Maybe you want to get some winter sun. You want to learn how to ski, or you want to see the Northern Lights. Or maybe you're inspired by different movies or series, such as Game of Thrones, which feels like it has been filmed in nearly every country of the world. It hasn't, but there are a lot of destinations you can go to which actually has scenes from Game of Thrones, if you love that. Lord of the Rings in New Zealand, where you can go visit Hobbiton, Sound of Music in Austria, Emily in Paris, which is apparently a new Netflix series. You can go and visit all the different sites that she goes to in Paris there. Maybe there's somewhere that's always been on your travel wish list. Maybe there's more ideas that you can think of. So I hope this section kind of inspires you on new places to go. Then we move on to how to travel solo successfully. I know it may seem quite contradictory to want to take a tour. Even if you're traveling independently, you're going to be taking day tours at some point because if you want to get to certain areas or see things which are a little bit more challenging for you to actually go and do yourself, then you will be taking tours at some point anyway. If you're the kind of person who worries about every single step of a trip, from logistics to accommodation to activities, a tour could be right for you. And even the word tour nowadays, they've changed. It's got a very different meaning to following someone, a guide that's waving a flag. You can still find them, especially if you do walking tours in different cities. But tours now cater for everybody. So you may find yourself going to lesser known spots, areas that are difficult for you to get to alone. They are a great way to meet people. You could even just do it at the beginning of your trip. I went to Taiwan and I was there for a week, and I actually did a tour for 5 of those days because I was able to get all around the country. It was one of the best tours I've ever done, to be honest. And at the beginning, I was in Taipei solo, and at the end, I was in Taipei solo, where I actually did stuff by myself and went off and did day tours. But it was a really good mix, and it really helped me navigate my way around a country where I couldn't speak Mandarin. Some companies also really cater to solo travelers now. So you have a company called Just You. You have, I think, the Solo Female Travel Network. G Adventures have just released their solo-ish tours. So for the first 3 days of a tour, they do these bonding exercises. So you really get to know who's on your tour and you get to bond with them during your tour. I love that idea. So I don't think it's cheating if you take a tour, especially if you're going somewhere that you may need a tour. I went to Syria and I had to go on a tour. Turkmenistan, for example, I think you have to go on a tour. Bhutan, you have to book a private tour, even though it's private. It's really hard to not go anywhere and not have a tour. The best apps for solos. I do recommend getting a SIM card. I only started doing this a few years ago, and I don't know why I waited so long to get a SIM card. It's so much easier. You can navigate your way around a city. You've got data. If you get into trouble, you've got data. For the cost of a SIM card, really, really is worth having. But there are also loads of other apps as well. I mean, obviously, that's not an app, it's a SIM card, including the Girl About the Globe app, where we've got discounts to more than 40 different brands. So you can save money on a travel bra, on retreats, on travel shoes, transfers. There's also other ones where you can connect with different solo travelers. There's one called Nomad Her, and it's a travel app designed specifically for women. There's Maps.me. If you don't have data, Maps.me is an offline map that you can use, and you can actually put a little flag in where you're staying, so then you can follow the route back. There's also one called Currency, which I absolutely love. It's a lifesaver if you're traveling to a lot of different countries with different currencies, and you can use it offline. There's one called TripIt. I've never used this one, but it's designed to make your travel plans more organized. So you can forward your travel confirmation emails to the app and it puts all your plans into a daily itinerary. I do know people that have used it and I still use a spreadsheet because I'm quite old school, but it is very good if you use your phone quite a lot. There's Wi-Fi map, which shows you where there's Wi-Fi when you're traveling. Do definitely recommend getting an app for taxis, whether that's Uber, Bolt, Grab, works the same, which is called different things in different countries. There's even one in Sri Lanka where you can, I think it's Uber rickshaw or something like that, where you can book a rickshaw on the app. I just think for solo travelers, that really guarantees your safety. I mean, nothing is guaranteed, but it guarantees your safety more than you just jumping into a cab on the side of the road. So you can actually generally see who your taxi driver is going to be. your journey's registered. I think with Uber, you can even send your journey to a loved one so they know where your last journey was. And there's one called GeoShore, and they have an award-winning travel app, which is ideal for women traveling alone. It's a personalized, location-sensitive safety awareness app. And then the last one, if you're counting countries, like me, you might want the Marco travel app, which is you could do different lists. The one that I'm doing is the UN registered countries. When I just came back from Oceania, every single country that I was in, it says you are in Palau, and then you tick it. So then it just keeps account of all your countries that you've been to. How to meet others. A lot of people are worried that they're just going to be by themselves for the whole trip. Just because you start your trip being solo does not mean that you're going to end it being solo or you're going to be solo in the middle as well. Hostels, of course, are the best way to meet people. And a lot of hostels hold daily tours and events, nightly events. You can go on bar crawls with them. Again, it really doesn't matter what your age. I've been on bar crawls in my 40s and stayed at hostels, and it's been absolutely fine. And travelers are a friendly bunch. As I say, we've all got this growth mindset. If they are solo as well, you'll often find that they will just invite you to go exploring with them for the day. And if checking into a hostel by yourself is a little bit daunting, there is an app with Hostel World. So you can see who's staying in your hostel before you actually get there. So you can meet your potential roommates before you arrive. It's such a good social aspect to the app that I really like. Walking tours are a great way to meet people. If you arrange a walking tour at the beginning of your trip, then you may even meet people that are staying on for a few days and you can meet them for dinner afterwards or do another tour with them. They're generally free and you just make a donation at the end. With tours lasting anything from like an hour to, I don't know, 3, 4 hours, it gives you a lot of opportunity to actually speak to other people on the tour. Public transport, you can just speak to people on the train or the bus, especially if you see another person who looks similar to you who's carrying a big backpack. Then you know that they are a traveller as well. There's also meetups. So if you check the platform Meetup, you can see what's happening in the city or place you're going to and just sign up for an event and just go along to the event and meet people. There's couch surfing. You don't have to stay with people if you are couch surfing, and some people don't like the fact that they're staying with strangers. So what you can do is just, which I did when I was in France, is posted that I'm going to be here on this date. Would anyone like to meet for coffee? And I actually met up with someone for coffee, and it was really nice. Language exchanges, especially if you're in a Spanish-speaking country, which is called an intercambio, you can have a look for them. You could try a cookery class. That's such an entertaining, great way to meet people as well because you're all cooking the same dish at the same time. It's much easier to bond with people actually in one of those tours. Or join a Facebook group. There are so many Facebook groups for nearly virtually every city. So you can just join a Facebook group. If you're traveling to Thailand, for example, there are Thai expats. All you need to do is just Google the place you're going to and Facebook group, and then you're probably going to find someone who's actually there now, or they're heading there at the same time as you. What to do in the evenings? Depending on where I am, sometimes I don't go out in the evenings. It depends on how I feel. And I definitely do not go out and drink by myself in the evenings. If I do go out and have a couple of drinks, it's generally on a bar tour where I am with other people. What you can do though on an evening is you can visit a museum or art gallery. Some of them are open in the evenings. You can attend a concert or performance. Some places also have concerts outside as well, so you get to really kind of integrate with the local people. You can attend a local workshop or a talk, a cooking class again. And not just bar tours. If you're not really into bar hopping, I have been on a few food tours in the evening where you go to different cafes or restaurants and you actually try the different foods. So that's quite a good way of you dining out and meeting people at the same time. You can go to the cinema. A lot of cinemas have English subtitles. You could visit a comedy club, see if there's any live music nearby. Take yourself to a salsa club, do a dance lesson. Take an evening walking tour. Some places also have like spooky tours where you can do a ghost tour. Or just stay in and catch up on your latest series of Netflix. If you really don't feel like going out, you don't have to go out. You can read a book. You can call your family or your friends. You can write in your diary. You can go to bed early so that you're up early to go and climb up a volcano in the morning. Just if you do go out, just remember to kind of stay away from beach isolated areas and isolated beaches at night. That also leads me on how to stay safe. That's one of the tips there. You also find that when you're solo traveling, your instinct is very heightened. So you will feel when you're not in a good situation. And the key here is just to be assertive and to just remove yourself from any situation that you don't feel comfortable in, which is something that I've learned over my 25 years of solo travel. I used to be too scared to be seen as coming across as rude when I, I didn't want to leave a conversation because I didn't want to be rude. But now it doesn't bother me. Like if my instinct's saying just get away from this person, then I do. Make sure that you use recommended taxi companies. You can ask your accommodation, or if you're in a restaurant or something, you could ask them to call a taxi for you. Try to, but I have made this mistake in the past. When I arrive really early in the morning, especially if I've been on a long flight, you get people at the airport that go taxi, 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 and I've gone with them in the past, and I don't recommend doing that. I recommend going to a line where the taxis are and actually taking a registered taxi because you never know whose car you're going to get into. So don't do what I used to do. If you are worried about staying safe, then choose a country that's really safe. You can have a look at the safety indexes. You can have a look at the, say, the UK Foreign Office and see which countries are really safe as well. Avoid attention. I dress very poor when I travel alone. I have my hair tied back. I don't wear a lot of makeup, especially because I'm blonde and I can get a lot of attention in countries where there aren't many blondes. So I do dress down, don't really wear any expensive jewelry, try to blend in as much as I can, which is very difficult sometimes being white and blonde, but it does make me feel safer. Try not to wear any clingy stuff, try not to have too much flesh showing, try and see what the locals dress like and dress kind of similar if I can. I also signed up to do self-defense lessons. I find that very empowering and it makes you feel that even if something did happen, which it probably won't, but you will be empowered and you will know what to do if something does happen. I don't take too much money out. I always leave a card behind. So it's just being quite streetwise. Should you tell people you're alone? This obviously depends on your instinct. If you're staying in a hostel, then I think it's fine to tell people because you might, they might even see that you're alone anyway. If you're getting unwanted attention, maybe say that you're here with a husband or boyfriend, or partner, and that you're going to be meeting them or you're heading that way to meet them or they're going to be joining you soon. I've also made the mistake of being over friendly in certain countries because I'm quite friendly. Like I can be quite outgoing, but I've toned that down in certain countries. And yes, you shouldn't have to be someone that you're not when you're traveling solo, but it is kind of a safety thing. Don't give a guy too much attention because they may think that that's a come on, especially if they're in a country where they're not used to Westerners. They might have a very different outlook on a blonde Western woman. So I try and not be as friendly. Obviously, there are so many other topics under this section. So you've got eating alone in a restaurant, how to stay healthy and fit, and traveling on a budget. All of this is covered on the blog, by the way. So I'll be giving away a PDF afterwards, which will give you links for where to go to get more details. Next section is actually planning your dream trip. Hopefully by now you should have decided where you want to go or make a short list of where you want to go or decide what experience you want to get out of your country. Then determine how long you can go for, because that does make a difference. If you are in the UK, you want to go to Australia, but you only have a week's holiday, it may not be quite feasible because you're going to be losing a lot of time in the sky and a lot of flying time and also allow for any jet lag as well. So I recommend having a look at somewhere that's just a couple of hours away if you don't have long, or maybe 4 to 6 hours away if you're going somewhere for 2 weeks. Also have a look at the weather where you're going. Is it going to be monsoon season? Is it hurricane season? What is it going to be like? I have traveled to the Philippines when it was cyclone season. Is that what they call it there? It was okay. And it did rain a few days, I was worried about flights being cancelled, but my flights didn't get cancelled and I was fine. But it is a bit of a risk that you take if you are traveling somewhere during the rainy season. To make a short list of places that you want to go and determine it by can I get there in the amount of time? Is the weather going to be okay? Is there an event happening? If there's an event happening in the city that you want to go to, accommodation could be really expensive, flights could be really expensive. It's not going to be a very pleasant experience if you're traveling to Barcelona and there's a huge event on and the streets are crowded, for example. Next stage is checking visas and vaccinations. So you also want to check your passport, make sure you have at least 6 months left on your passport. Checking a visa is really important. A lot more countries nowadays are either giving visa on arrival, depending on what your passport is, and e-visas, which makes it so much easier than having to go to the embassy or the consulate in your home country and waiting a week or 2 weeks to get your passport sent back to you. But do check if the places on your shortlist need a visa. That might determine which one of the places that you want to go to, depending on how when you want to go there. If you want to go there in the following month and the visa is going to take a long time, then obviously you can't go there on that trip. Check your vaccinations as well. You might need Hep A, you may need polio. I mean, there's a lot that are quite universal now. Check if it's a malaria area. Don't get caught out. If you do get caught out, and you can sometimes buy malaria tablets in pharmacies when you're abroad, but things like that are worth planning before you go. You also need to make sure that you have enough time to get your vaccinations before your trip. I don't have the rabies shots because there are 3 shots. It's a shot and 2 boosters, I believe. And you can only have them after a few certain weeks after each other. I wasn't in England long enough to be able to get the rabies shots. So do have a look at the amount of time you've got to get the shots and whether that is feasible for your trip. Next thing to do is plan what to do. So now that you know where you're going and you've got enough time, what you want to have a look at is things that you want to do there. And how I do that, I look at Get Your Guide. There's also Viator. I have a look at the Get Your Guide platform, even if I'm not booking for it. And it gives me a list of all the must-sees in that destination. And then it gives me a list of everything else I can do, whether that's diving, snorkeling, cookery classes, walking tours, things to do in the evening. The amount of things you can do in a destination now is crazy. So I always use that to plan what to do. I also make sure that if there is something that I will regret not doing, especially if it's a destination where there's only something you can ever really do there, I make sure that I allow enough time for that so that I don't miss out on that opportunity. So, for example, Paris, you wouldn't want to miss out on the Louvre. So make sure that you write down your must-sees and then maybe bonus ones for what you want to do and what you want to see. Because sometimes you just can't do everything in one trip, and that's okay. You can always go back and hopefully in a future time if you do want to go and see other things. Also, depending on what time of year you want to go, especially if you're going in the summer, you may want to look at skip the line tickets because you don't want to be queuing, say, for the Louvre again for hours and hours on end, where you could get a skip the line ticket and just pay a bit extra, and then you can just go in and save time. And then the time that you would spend queuing, you could then go and see another attraction. Decide where to stay. Obviously, if you're going to be staying somewhere central, it's going to be more expensive. But if you only have 2 or 3 days, it could work out better for you to stay central or have a look for public transport, which is on check how to get around and see how much that is going to and from the different destinations that you want to see in that destination. And then just try to plan a route. If you have a few things happening in one area, write them all down for that particular area, then have a look at another area and then see how you get from there to there. Maybe you want to stay in one of those areas, or you might want to stay in between the 2 areas or 3 areas. So just have a look at accommodation and decide what type of accommodation you want to stay. If you want to meet people, stay in a hostel. If you want a more local experience, you could do Airbnb. You could also stay in a guest house or a bed and breakfast. Maybe you want to stay in an apartment. Maybe you want to stay in a hotel or an eco accommodation. Again, there's so much different choice of different accommodation, but just have a look at the reviews and see what it says about how far it is from the transport and how welcoming and how friendly it is as well. Check how to get around. I use Rome to Rio. Love this site. It basically shows you every single city that you want to go to and how to get there from the airport, or it shows you how to get from this city to that city and all the different ways you can do it, from cost of taxis to trains, buses, planes, ferries. It's now extremely comprehensive, and that will really help you decide how to get around. And if you are going to be staying in more than one location, it will help you see how to get from place to place. Can you use public transport? Do you need to hire a car? Do you need to get a private driver? Then also check flights. If your travel is months away, I recommend signing up for a price alert with Skyscanner. I always use Skyscanner, but there are other platforms you can use as well, like Google Flights. And if you sign up for Skyscanner, it will then email you whenever the price drops or the price increases. So you know kind of when you should be booking your flight. You can also say search for Georgia, and it gives you the cheapest month that you can go. So if you're quite flexible, it also helps with you looking at when the cheapest planes are and non-direct or direct. Then it's time to book your trip. There's so many different sites out there, it can be quite overwhelming. So I do have on the menu of the blog at the top, it does say book your trip, which is all my favorite booking sites. Make sure that you get insurance, because once you've booked your trip, if something goes wrong and you can't go on your trip, then you need to make sure that you're covered. I always travel with medical healthcare at the very least. I mean, for me, it doesn't really matter if clothes go missing, toiletries go missing. I always get medical cover, and I always get cover for my laptop and my phone as well. So insurance companies that I recommend are Safety Wing, World Nomads, and True Traveller. Okay, so stage 5 is making an impact. As I said before, even if you book through the Girl About the Glow blog, you are making an impact, because I then donate money to the Girl About the Glow Foundation that helps vulnerable girls in conflict zones. Being a conscious traveler actually means that you want to make a positive impact in the world and to the places that you go to. So whether that's traveling to an emerging destination that actually wants tourists to go there, unlike places such as Barcelona, where they were writing on the walls that tourists go away. It's also about becoming culturally and environmentally sensitive, making sure that our money that we pay goes back into the community of the country that we're traveling to and benefits the local people. It means thinking local, buy local, stay local, just keep thinking local, and you're going to be on the right lines. So, ways to be a conscious traveler is to avoid orphanages, which can be a business. Some of the kids aren't even orphans, apparently, and it's just a money-making scheme. You can volunteer through an ethical company if you do want to go volunteering. You can reduce your footprint, and I know it's a bit of a controversial thing to say, because people say, well, if you're traveling, is that really conscious anyway? But I do think that if you travel in the right way, you can make an impact to the local community who need tourism. One of the countries that I recently went to, which is Vanuatu, had a devastating earthquake. And 2 weeks later, we weren't even the first tour group to go there. But the island relies on tourism. It relies on us going and spending our there. It was our Australian dollar, and that's how the locals make their living. If you're going to the right places and giving back to the locals, then I do think you can be making an impact. But you can reduce your footprint, which means going overland as much as you can, using local transport as much as you can. You can offset your carbon footprint. You can use a carbon footprint calculator and then pay, and then plant trees in exchange for the carbon that you're using. Make sure that you take ethical photos of people and children. So ask people if you're going to be wanting to take a picture of them, and then show them the picture afterwards. Some people don't want their pictures taken, which is absolutely fair enough in this day and age of strangers appearing on Instagram and them not signing up for that. And also make sure that if you want to go and see wildlife, that it is done ethically. In my 20s, I did go elephant riding in Thailand. Now I know that that is not ethical, and the way that they breed the elephants and look after them was not an ethical way. So I do feel quite ashamed to say that. But obviously nowadays there's so much more education, and you can just go and visit sanctuaries instead of riding animals. Obviously, there's reducing plastic as well. You can buy a bamboo water filter and take that with you instead of buying plastic bottles. There's collapsible cups as well that helps reduce your plastic consumption. Also, be very mindful of what you buy. I'm not saying this to preach because I've made this mistake as well. It's very easy to pick up a pretty souvenir, which is what I've done in the past, and then not realize it's made out of rhino horn or there's a lot of things made from ivory. Try to avoid buying anything that looks as though it might be made from a threatened or endangered species, including coral and other marine life. Don't buy any fake goods such as imitation Gucci handbags because you don't actually know what you're funding. So look for artisans, look for people who are actually making the products in front of you. I recently came back from Indonesia and I bought this really lovely wooden cup from the man that was actually making it when I was there. I visited a puppet store, which was UNESCO, and I bought a puppet from a store where I knew it had been made. So just always think local, 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 local. What you can also do is visit a social impact project. If they have cafes or restaurants that employ local communities, that employ disadvantaged people in the community or disabled people, they are an amazing way of giving back. You can have a coffee or your lunch there, which is what you'd be doing if you're out anyway, but you know that that helps employ someone who's disadvantaged and it goes back into the local community. All you need to do is just search for social impact projects in the country or city that you're going to. And then also to be a conscious traveler, it means to embrace every single moment, which is what I was saying earlier, because solo travel does force you to be in the moment. And you become mindful of every single action that you take. You become so vigilant and mindful because you are by yourself. So whether that's looking at your accommodation, whether you're just walking through a back street or taking a long bus journey, you're so much more aware of what you're seeing. So just being conscious and mindful in every single day of our trip. How to have a cultural experience. It's all about kind of not being judgmental, which can be quite challenging sometimes if you are in a country that does not resonate with you, you're not having a good time, things are being done that you wouldn't normally expect to be done that way. It can be a little bit challenging, but that is why you're traveling. Instead, when things really don't go your way, or when the locals have a bit of a laid back attitude of, yeah, mañana, mañana, or tomorrow, tomorrow, not really good at timekeeping. You just need to kind of let go. It helps you to surrender and it helps us to immerse more in the destination when we let go. But having prior knowledge of the culture before you arrive helps. Then you know, okay, this person isn't being rude or arrogant, or this is just the way that they are. They can't speak English, so that's why they're having that interaction with me like that, you know? So if you've got a better understanding of the way that the country works, it'll be easier to interact with other people. Being alone can be seen as a bit taboo in some countries, especially if you're unmarried and you don't have any children. So again, you could say that you've got a husband or partner if you don't want people to look at you disapprovingly or make you feel uncomfortable. Adapting your time to theirs. If you're in Spain, they eat really late. Try and adapt your time to theirs a little bit more. Sometimes all the facilities don't work as well. I'm very fortunate to live in Dubai, which is a city of convenience. Not everywhere is like this. So it can feel quite frustrating. Like cars can be honking somewhere. People have got no regard for traffic rules. Sometimes it feels like they're just taking your life into their own hands when you get on a bus, especially if you go in Nepal. We just need to remember that deep down we are all the same and we all have the same needs. And it's just our conditioning and our upbringing that make us very different. So make sure you read about the cultural norms. You want to learn a few phrases in the local language, to know a few greetings, say thank you, please, hello. Understand dress codes, especially in more conservative regions. Carrying a scarf or shawl if you're in the Middle East, if you feel that you need to. Learn if tipping is the norm. You do not want to offend people by tipping, which sounds crazy, but there are countries where they don't really want you to tip. And we also travel the world to be a better person. So to try not to judge how others choose to live their lives and accept things, be open to another experience. And whether we perceive it as good or bad will really impact our trip. So just look at it objectively, and this is just the way it is. Choose sustainable travel products. There are so many travel products you can get nowadays. You can get like water filters, which is what I just mentioned. There's recycled day packs, recycled hiking backpacks, Patagonia clothing, which try to find solutions to the environmental crisis, Natura Care, which are kind to our body and the planet, natural deodorants, reef-friendly sunscreen, which is an amazing thing to take if you are going to be snorkeling or being in the water. There's also reusable tissue packs and cotton swabs from Last Object, eco underwear, there's travel pillows that are environmentally conscious. I also have a list on the blog of sustainable travel products. So there are lots of different ways that you can make an impact. And the final stage, which is returning home. This picture is off your mind. This has recently happened to me. I was away for a month and a half. I came back. First week, I was extremely jet lagged. After that, I then experienced reverse culture shock. I completely forgot what it was, what the signs were. I thought I was really down. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I felt very detached from my life that I'm living here. And it's a very strange feeling. It's something that not many people seem to talk about in regards to solo travel, but it is so important. And I wanted to include this in the masterclass because I want to show that this can happen. It doesn't happen all the time at all, but just for you to know it is normal if it does happen. When you are traveling, all your neurons in your mind are firing all the time. You're having new experiences, especially if you're traveling quite quickly, which is what I was doing for a month and a half. You are meeting new people, you've got new sights to see, you've got new smells, you've got new foods. So when you come back, you can actually feel lost, confused, and a bit out of touch. And everyday tasks can just seem really boring and mundane. Everything kind of feels the same, but it isn't. So it is scientifically proven that once you get home, the euphoria wears off because your brain's working less. There's no need for it to soak in your environment anymore or a new language because it's already been learned and it's so familiar to your brain. And you know the culture, so your brain doesn't have to learn anything new. So that's where the depressive thoughts can start to kick in a bit. So what you can do to get over the post-travel blues, like what I did, I just felt the need to go to the sea. I'd been traveling around all these islands. I live near the desert, so I just went and just sat by the sea for a little while. So what you can do, you just to get those neurons firing again, get some excitement back. You can find new ways of meeting people, so you can join meet-up groups in your city or your town. You can learn new skills that will help you ease back into your life at home and help keep you from boredom. Remember all the things that you really loved about traveling. Maybe it was dining out, so you can go to different restaurants, or you can learn to cook a meal or a dish that you had in your country. Maybe you loved hiking, you could join a hiking group. Maybe you found that you've now got a new passion for South Korea pop or soap operas or something from South Korea. So you can incorporate that into your everyday life. You could even just join couch surfing as a host, meet other travelers. So you've still got that kind of traveling spirit coming through you. You could go and be a tourist. You just spent months or weeks being one. So you don't need to stop doing that just because you're back at home. Maybe you've never looked at your home city or country through a traveler's eyes. Go exploring. Go and take a walking tour, go to a museum. The human mind is so much more adaptable than we think. Don't forget, you could even start learning a language as well. Or do something to help somebody. You can volunteer, get physical, go dry skiing, exercise, try a different, there's so many different exercises that you can get nowadays. There's always something new coming out. So try something new. Just find something that really interests you and just get your body moving and practice gratitude. So practice gratitude for at least 5 minutes every day. Say thank you for all the people that you met. Look at through your travel photos, recapture those memories, post them on Instagram. And there are benefits to being back, obviously. You know how everything works. You've got people there that you love. Your outlook on life may be different. Of course, it will be. You should be more empowered, but you should also be able to sweat the small stuff less. That if the train's late for 5 minutes, it may not stress you out as much because you had a bus that broke down when you were traveling. So you probably have changed, and creating a life for yourself back home isn't necessarily that easy. It is all about balance. So the last stage of reverse culture shock is just adapting back to life back at home. Soon your normal routine would have changed and it will become a lot more comfortable. But if being at home really isn't for you, then maybe have a look at either planning another trip or start a saving plan, start looking for another job, look at remote work and consider even being a digital nomad. Okay, so what's next? What's next is to download your free PDF. I know that I've just given you a lot of information, so if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed and are unsure of what to do next, I'm sending you a PDF of all the slides with links for every tip on every stage of the journey. You just need to click on the topics to read the relevant articles. If you do want to go deeper on any of these stages, I will also be offering services, so keep an eye out for that. There's going to be solo travel coaching to get over the mindset and to actually get yourself ready to go and to want to go and to know that you can do it. I'm also going to be starting a travel agency and itinerary planning. And I'm going to be bringing back the Plan Your Dream Solo Trip workshop if you want to go deeper into planning a trip. Plus, I also want to give you 60% off the Solo Female Travel Bundle. It's a starter bundle and it gives you all the confidence and knowledge that you need to travel the world alone. I don't want you to make the same mistakes as me that I made in the last 25 years. So I'll be giving you 60% off the Solo Travel Starter Bundle if you're interested in that. And thank you so much for just attending this masterclass. I really hope that it's inspired and empowered you to travel solo. Travel solo is one of the best things you will ever do. I guarantee it. And you will grow so much from that experience. If you need anything else, or you also want to ask me a question, and then feel free just to drop me a question on the email. And if you want to go into more depth on a topic, keep an eye out for the services that I'm going to be doing. And that's it. Like, good morning, good evening. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and safe travels.